Hello everybody, Claudia Boleyn here and welcome to my feminist thought of the week. This is a segment that I've decided to do more often now, and I'm not promising that it'll be a segment that comes every week on my channel, but every so often, if there is a feminist topic that I have feelings about that I'd like to discuss and talk about on camera, then I'm going to put it in this particular series, which will probably go on for a very long time and the videos may well be sporadic. I'd just like to say before I start talking about the actual topics at hand that I know a lot of people will be watching this who are not feminists, who are perhaps anti-feminists and are watching this because they don't like feminism, and I just have two things to say to you. First of all, I'd just like to say that I'd like you to please keep an open mind if you could, because I think it's important that we listen to each other, and if you're here you might as well listen to what I've got to say. And second of all, I would like to say that I am a huge believer in the freedom of speech, and if you disagree with any of the points I bring up or anything that comes out of my mouth during this video, then I completely support you saying that in the comment section. You can disagree with any of the points that come out of my mouth and that is fine, I support you in doing that, but I would ask that you please do not personally attack me because there's really no need for it. I am showing you the respect of saying, look, you can say whatever you want in my comment section. I've still got my comments enabled at the moment, despite a lot of harassment I've had in my comment section, and I'm hoping that you'll do me the courtesy of attacking my points rather than me as a person. Today's video is going to be all about Anita Sarkeesian and a video I watched yesterday. I was linked to it on Tumblr, called What I Couldn't Say, and I believe she made it at the All About Women event, and she made it on the 8th of March. That's what it says in my notes. And in this video she talks about the harassment she's received online and the way it's impacted the way she now goes about her activism. I found it very emotional to watch. I related to a lot of what she had to say. I don't really understand why Anita Sarkeesian has become this controversial figure, because she is an outspoken feminist who critiques the sexism and misogyny in the video games industry. And I mean, I'm not a huge gamer, to be honest. I like film and I like television, and that's kind of the media I enjoy. I don't really play games. My brother's more of a gamer than me, and even he's not that much of a gamer. I know there is a lot of sexism and misogyny within the games industry because I've got quite a few friends who are really into their gaming. And as far as I can see, and I followed quite a lot of Anita Sarkeesian's work, I can't see that she's done anything that awful, to be honest. It looks to me just like a woman critiquing an industry and critiquing certain games and the role of women in certain games and the portrayal of women, and yet she's had this absolute online campaign of hatred and harassment, and it's really scary, and it's almost unbelievable. Although I know it's true because I've had a small scale of that myself on some of my own videos. But it is unbelievable. It's like some sort of alternate world. It's really difficult to understand that this is happening today in this day and age. In Anita's video, she spoke about how she's had to alter the way she goes about her activism online because of the way her comments are construed and this online hate campaign that's been created. And the way that she's been portrayed as a sort of villain of a game. It's like the hate campaign itself has become a sort of odd game and she's the villain you have to defeat. And it's very scary. I follow Anita on Twitter, and occasionally she posts some of the harassment that she receives, and it's really terrifying, and no one should have to deal with that. I mean, even if Anita was saying some really awful things, you know, online or whatever, I just don't see the need to be harassing somebody, and it's all the more scary because she doesn't say anything that I think's particularly controversial either. I think she doesn't attack anybody individually. She critiques the game industry in general and the attitudes within it. So it's really rather frightening, the lengths that some people will go to preserve their privilege within the game industry. I wrote quite a few quotes down that I thought were very that really hit me in her speech, that I wanted to talk about because I felt I could relate to them and maybe give some of my own experience as a feminist online. I don't have nearly as much exposure as Anita, and in a lot of ways I'm very grateful for that, because I can't imagine how awful it must be for Anita to have. She says in her video she's, you know, really hyper-vigilant and it impacts her everyday life, and thank goodness for me it impacts my internet life, but obviously I'm not a well-known feminist person outside of my particular corner of the internet, so I can sort of escape that in my day-to-day life, but I can't imagine how awful that must be for Anita, having to live that every day. What Anita said very early on in her speech is, "What I couldn't say is I'm angry." And I think that's so true. Tone policing is something I really despise, and I suppose tone policing I would define as when you wind a person up about an issue which is very close to them, and then you discount what they have to say if they display anger. Well, that really doesn't make much sense to me, because people who are closer to an issue are always going to react more explosively around it and are more likely to express more emotion. And I don't think expressing an emotion while talking about a topic makes you any more or less qualified to talk on the topic, to be honest. And I think it is, again, what Anita said, that emotions are considered to be this feminine trait, and they're considered to be a weakness, so people that show emotion are immediately discounted. I've had real trouble with this personally, because I am mentally ill. So a lot of feminists will be like, oh, you know, we're not crazy, we're not like delusional or whatever, or that kind of thing. And it's very difficult to be a mentally ill feminist, because sometimes I am over emotional, and sometimes I can see things in black and white, and I do have emotional issues like that. So that can be very difficult, being a mentally ill feminist. And I'm still trying to navigate that, to be honest, because I like to think that like Anita, I watch my stuff before I put it online, and I make sure I'm not, you know, venting too much on my Twitter. You know, I check all my tweets to make sure everything's thought out and it's not just spur of the moment, you know, when I'm having a particularly bad day. But it is very difficult being a mentally ill feminist, because it's used against you. I mean, just recently I was linked to a picture on Facebook where they called me socially retarded, and that kind of thing happens all the time. They call me crazy, and they called me a psychopath, which that's not what I've got anyway. It's not psychopathy. I've got an anxiety disorder and depression, possible BPD, but it's a bit of a mess. But yes, that can be extremely difficult. So to add being a woman on the internet with opinions to being a woman who is outspokenly mentally ill, it's an absolute nightmare to have your voice heard and be taken seriously. But I refuse to hide the fact that I'm mentally ill, because a lot of women online are mentally ill, and I think it's important that feminism is intersectional, and why shouldn't women who are mentally ill also be allowed to talk about inequality? I think it's important that our voices are heard. Anita said in her speech that what I couldn't say is anything funny. She stopped making jokes and being sarcastic, and she really cut out that side of her personality when she was making her videos, because everything she was saying that was a joke or that was sarcastic was being misconstrued, deliberately taken by people and presented as if she didn't know what she was talking about, as if she was ignorant about the topic at hand. And I've had that happen to me before. I've been misquoted on things where I've quite obviously been sarcastic. A lot of my videos I'm quite jokey and sarcastic, and I think I make it quite obvious that I am, but I've been misquoted on some of those things before. Not even misquoted, actually. It's because I've said a certain quote, but it's been, you know, sarcasm or something, and it's been used against me, and I've had it used months later, like, you know, you said this, and it's very difficult to get past that, and that's not something that men face so often. I do feel like as a woman you are policed. You're not allowed to be funny. You're not allowed to be sarcastic, because everything you say can and will be used against you. Something else Anita said in her speech is, "I am angry that I am expected to accept online harassment as the price of being a woman with an opinion." And when she said this, I wasn't sure whether to punch the air or to start crying, basically, because I think that is the truth of it. I think that being a woman with an opinion online, you get harassment, especially if you talk about misogyny and sexism. And it's not only that either. People from other groups get the same. So, I mean, for example, like trans women online, women of colour online, trans women of colour, because I believe that privilege and oppression are, it's not as black and white as, you know, I'm a woman and therefore I'm oppressed, and I'm a man, therefore I'm privileged. You know, obviously lots of different factors factor into the equation. It's got to be intersectional when we think about oppression and privilege, because, for example, a white woman would have the privilege of being white, whereas a man who is black would still suffer institutionalised racism. So it's not as clear-cut as all that. But I think that it's a thing that is quite exclusive to women, that you will receive very specifically gendered harassment. Often you'll look on guys who've made very controversial videos, or in fact, actually, I follow some guys who who come out with some very feminist opinions and would maybe not label themselves feminist but believe in feminism and are feminist allies, and they don't get nearly as much harassment on their channels. I mean, sometimes they'll be called a fool, or they'll be sworn at or something, but it's not gendered, you know. They're not getting rape threats, they're not being called the B word or the C word, they're not having their appearance ripped into. It's a very different experience online depending on your gender. So I don't believe that all people who state their opinions online suffer the same, because when you look at very popular male vloggers who talk about feminist issues, they really don't get these rape threats, they don't get these gendered slurs. It's a very different world. Anita said in her video, "I rarely feel comfortable speaking spontaneously. I carefully consider the wording of every tweet I make to make sure it is clear and I can't be misconstrued." I can relate to that so heavily because I do that too. I often get, I have quite a few people calling me a liar for all sorts of things that aren't lies. Like, for example, I call myself bisexual and I call myself queer. I am bisexual and I am queer. I've reclaimed the term queer. I'm a queer woman, bisexual, and I'm cisgender. And, you know, I'll have people saying, oh, she's a liar because she says she's queer one minute and she's bisexual the next. So I shouldn't have to do it, and it's really pandering to this deliberate ignorance, and I really shouldn't pander to it, but I do. I've now made a point of having to explain that. I mean, even in this video, I've just explained that to you, because so much of the time I'm called a liar for that, for example. Or when someone will ask me about my mental illness, they'll say, how are you feeling mentally at the moment? And I'll say, oh, the depression's really kicking in. And then suddenly someone will say something like, oh, I thought you had an anxiety disorder, you're a liar. You know, it's a really horrible place to be in online sometimes, and you do feel very policed and scrutinised. So the main point of this video, and the main point of, I think, her speech, and the bit that really got to me, it actually really upset me, I have to admit, because I could really relate to it. And I still can't believe that we're in this situation, to be honest. I can't believe that a woman online talking about something which really shouldn't be controversial is facing such harassment, and I can't believe that people like myself and my friends online who are feminists, I can't believe that we receive harassment either. It's like a fantasy world. It's like a dystopian novel. It's hard to believe it's real. What Anita said is, what I couldn't say is I'm a human being, and she can't show that it gets to her, because I suppose showing that it gets to you sometimes can come across as you don't want to attract more harassment, because if people think that someone's managed to hurt you by harassing you, then others will join them and they'll try to do it again. But it's a very difficult situation to navigate, because at the same time, you know, you want to be yourself, and you want to be emotional, you want to be real, you want to be speaking your truth, you don't want to be censoring yourself, and you don't want to come across as someone who it doesn't matter to, because it does matter. I mean, something Anita said which really struck a chord with me is that sometimes, and I can relate to this very much, sometimes it feels like just another day. You know, you'll get harassment come through, you'll get a rape threat come through, you'll get, you know, gendered slurs and things, and it just doesn't even touch you because it happens so often. And I have that. Whenever I make a feminist video, I kind of expect that kind of thing, and it doesn't really touch me. But at the same time, on other days, you know, you'll get a comment and you'll be, you know, something bad will have happened in the day and you'll read it at the wrong time and it will really hurt you. And it's difficult striking that balance because you don't know how to respond. You know, they say ignore people who send you harassment and that kind of thing to show that you're strong. But Anita's right. Why should we have to sacrifice that humanity and that honesty of saying, you know what, that hurt and I shouldn't have to put up with it? Why should we have to sacrifice that as the price of being a woman online and being taken seriously? Why should we? I just want to read you a quote now. It's quite a long one, but I just thought it was so excellently put. Somehow we fooled ourselves into thinking that by expressing human emotion it somehow means the harassers have won. This false belief is largely because in our society women are not allowed to express feelings without being characterised as hysterical, erratic, bitchy, highly emotional or overly sensitive. Our expressions of insecurity, doubt, anger, sadness are all policed, and it often gets used against us. Anita's words really made me look at myself and the way I go about my activism, actually. I really do feel like this speech has struck a chord with me and has changed the way I'm going to go about my activism in this year, in 2015. I feel like I have been afraid of showing weakness in some respects, and why should I? Why should I see pain and showing emotion as a weakness. I want to be who I am online, and I want to be able to be a human that is flawed like any other human. I shouldn't have to be perfect and emotionless in order to have my opinion listened to. Anita then went on to say, "What I couldn't say is, I don't even want to be saying any of this, largely because I still feel that expressing human emotions publicly will make me seem insecure." I can't tell you how much I relate to that. Even in this video, even just admitting that sometimes the harassment hurts, it feels very strange because you feel like you're going to get more harassment because a person will think, you know, these cruel people will think, oh great, it gets to her, let's send her some more and try and silence her. It's a very horrible, difficult position to be in, and it's something I've been fighting for a long time. I've wanted to blog honestly about my mental illness, and sometimes I have to admit I've deleted videos because I've thought, this will be used against me, I'll look weak. And I'm sad that I've had to do that. I'm very sad, and I don't want to do that anymore. Anita's right. Why should emotion and humanity be seen as a weakness? It shouldn't. If we see it as a weakness ourselves, then we've internalised that and we're perpetuating it, and we're making it more difficult for others to go out there and speak their truth, and that's the absolute opposite of what we want. We need to show that we encourage people being emotional if that's the way they want to express themselves, and we have to stop pretending we're these ice princesses made of stone and that the harassment doesn't hurt. And yeah, I mean, sometimes I get hate mail and I answer sarcastically, and you know, it can be amusing when it's just an anonymous person sometimes, and you and your followers can have a bit of a laugh about the ignorance there. But you know, sometimes it does hurt, and I guess I've been afraid of saying that, but it does sometimes really hurt. The last quote I want to read from Anita's speech is, "The truth is that women who persevere and retain some measure of their humanity are not expressing weakness, they're demonstrating courage." So that's the quote I wanted to leave you with this video, and it's something that I've really taken to heart, and I really hope that this video from Anita, this speech, will help me in my activism in the new year. I hope that it'll help me throughout 2015, and I hope that I can be more like her and be more courageous. I also just want to say that I do support Anita Sarkeesian. I really do support her. I think a lot of people are actually afraid of saying that, even because they're going to get hate for it and they're going to get harassment. People who support Anita, you know, do get a lot of harassment, and I do support Anita. And also, regardless of what she says, regardless of what she was saying, I do agree with what she says, but even if I didn't agree with what she said, I would never support this campaign of harassment against an individual to the point where they feel afraid and they can't disclose their location and they have to live in fear. What sort of a world are we living in? You can be the biggest anti-feminist in the world, and surely you'd agree that the harassment Anita Sarkeesian gets is not deserved. No one deserves it. It really upsets me that we live in a world where this harassment happens. Okay, I'm gonna go now. Thank you for watching my Feminist Thought of the Week. It's been pretty long, and I'll see you soon for another one. Okay, love you loads. Bye.